Hi, my name is Angela Rochetti, and I am doing a topic on ultra processed food. Does it have an effect on mental health? So, first, defining ultra processed foods. The NOVA food classification system defines ultra processed foods as industrial formulations made entirely or mostly from substances extracted from foods such as oils, fats, sugars, starch, and proteins, derived from food constitutes or synthesized in laboratories from food substrates or other organic sources. What does that mean? So, these are some of the characteristics of ultra processed foods. They could be added preservatives, sweeteners, artificial colors and flavors, added oils, and then you will typically see high amounts of added salt and sugars. And then over here, I put an example ingredient list from an Entenmann's chocolate chunk cookie, which pretty much has every single one of these characteristics included in it. So you'll see you've got preservatives at the bottom here with potassium sorbate. You've got added salt, definitely added sugar. There's vegetable oils, soybean and or canola, fructose, molasses, dextrose, as we learned in class, all different names for sugars. And then you've also got whey, riboflavin, things of that nature, and bleached wheat flour. So the objective, this paper seeks to examine scientific evidence linking ultra-processed foods to the development and or worsening of mental health disorders, and how we know that the mental health disorders are worsening is according to the WHO or World Health Organization, which state on their website that 1 in every 8 people in the world live with a mental health disorder. So I wanted to keep it broad as far as the mental health disorders went. However, when I was doing research, anxiety and depression were coming up the most. So I used the Auraria Library and Google Scholar mostly to find my research. And I put in defining sentences such as ultra-processed foods and mental health, ultra-processed foods and depression, ultra-processed foods and anxiety, impact of ultra-processed foods and psychological distress, and diet and mental health disorders. So one of the studies I first looked into, it was a retrospective observational study, and it was looking at ultra-processed food and binge eating behavior. And they did find a correlation between the two. This study was done on a total of 73 people. However, 70 of them were female and 3 were male. And the conclusion of the correlation found was that 55% was of the consumption of ultra-processed foods ranged in patients with anorexia, 72% in bulimia, and 69% in binge eating disorder. The next study I looked at ultra-processed foods and psychological distress. This was a Melbourne collaborative cohort study. It included a lot more people, 13,876 women and 9,423 men. And it did find the correlation that individuals with higher intakes of ultra-processed foods reported significantly higher levels of psychological distress one of the things it pointed out was in the food itself, the high sugar and unhealthy fats and artificial additives disrupted metabolic processes and promoted inflammation. And the reducing of the consumption of ultra processed foods might be an effective strategy for relieving the symptoms of depression and mental health. Did experience a greater decline in the overall quality in terms of mental health. And this was especially true with disadvantaged populations that may have limited access to food options and healthier food options. Another study I looked at was looking at ultra-processed foods and the risk of depression. So this study was interesting. It was a part of a long-running study for the Nurses' Health Study, and it analyzed dietary patterns and mental health data from over 40,000 participants. And in conclusion, they did find a significant association between a diet rich in ultra-processed foods, sugary snacks, processed meats, and prepackaged meals, and an elevated risk of depression. Again, this study mentioned that the ultra-processed foods, they believed, contributed to a lot of inflammation, other metabolic disturbances, which then had an effect on brain function, mood regulation, leading to a higher risk of depression. In conclusion, all of these studies mentioned inflammation, metabolic disruption due to a high consumption rate of ultra-processed foods. There seems to be a correlation between ultra-processed food consumption and the rise of mental health disorders, depression, anxiety, and binge eating. That's what this paper specifically looked at. This is due to the, again, high consumption. The food is typically nutrient poor and hyper palatable, which means you don't really get full from it and you just want to keep eating. And of course, socioeconomic factors may amplify the negative effects of these foods. And here are all of my references.